Hi, I'd like to share with you today a footnote from Kant's Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals. It comes from near the beginning of the book's third section, titled Transition from a Metaphysics of Morals to a Critique of Pure Practical Reason. It is in a subsection headed, Freedom Must Be Presupposed as a Property of the Will of All Rational Beings. Here, Kant is giving his practical proof of free will and explaining why he's not attempting a more rigorous metaphysical proof. Kant's ethical theory does not require him to prove that we are free, only that we cannot help but act under the idea of freedom, as though we were free. This is enough to ground his theory, says Kant. I will read a few sentences from this paragraph to give you the context, then read the footnote and explain what I think Kant is saying here. It is not enough to prove freedom from certain alleged experiences of human nature. Such a proof is indeed absolutely impossible, and so freedom can only be proved a priori. Rather, one must show that freedom belongs universally to the activity of rational beings endowed with a will. Now, I say that every being which cannot act in any way other than under the idea of freedom is, for that very reason, free from a practical point of view. This is to say that, for such a being, all the laws that are inseparably bound up with freedom are valid, just as much as if the will of such a being could be declared to be free in itself, for reasons that are valid for theoretical philosophy. That's where the footnote comes in. Here's what the footnote says. I adopt this method of assuming, as sufficient for our purpose, that freedom is presupposed merely as an idea by rational beings in their actions, in order that I may avoid the necessity of having to prove freedom from a theoretical point of view as well. For even if this latter problem is left unresolved, the same laws that would bind a being who was really free are valid equally for a being who cannot act otherwise than under the idea of its own freedom. Thus, we can relieve ourselves of the burden which presses on the theory. So, that's the text in the footnote. So what does Kant mean by this? In this subsection, he's establishing that all rational beings are free. This is a precondition for their being moral. But all rational beings are free is not the conclusion of an argument proving that rational beings in themselves possess some property called freedom. Instead, all rational beings are free is a necessary assumption that we must make about the activity of all rational beings, including ourselves. It's an assumption that every rational being must make about itself when it acts. Kant offers this as a practical proof and explains in the footnote why he does not attempt a theoretical or metaphysical proof. His reasoning is that, in practice, rational beings can never act any other way than under the idea of freedom. We'll need to investigate exactly what that means later. For now, let's say, we cannot act except with the assumption that our acts are free. Thus, freedom accompanies every action of ours just as much as if we knew by some metaphysical proof that we are free beings. In the footnote, Kant explains his reason for proceeding this way, to avoid the necessity of giving a theoretical proof of freedom. Since the same laws of freedom, including moral obligation, that would apply to beings that are free in themselves, also apply to beings that cannot act except under the idea of freedom, Kant can make an end run around the demand for a metaphysical or empirical proof that humans are free. If the practical proof works, then it does not matter, for Kantian ethics anyway, whether we are really free or really unfree in some noumenal sense. So that's my explanation of what I think Kant is up to in this footnote from page 50 of the Hackett edition of The Grounding of the Metaphysics of Morals. I hope you found it interesting. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.